Good morning, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Doug Gardner, and today I'm going to share with you how I go about doing a lapse time photograph. Now, I said lapse time, not time lapse. That's two different things. A time lapse is a series of photographs that are taken over a period of time, and those photographs are continuously taken over that period of time and then played back in rapid succession, which shows you everything that occurred during that time period. Whereas a lapse time is just a few photographs that are taken periodically throughout a block of time, and then they are faded together in video editing software, which gives you the feel of movement and shows you changes that may have taken place during that block of time. So now for those photographers out there, this applies to you too. This video is going to help videographers as well as still photographers, because essentially all we're going to be doing is taking 4 still landscape shots and then editing them together. So all the basics of photography still apply to my photographer friends out there. My plans are is I want to do a lapse time of this beautiful cypress tupelo swamp here in South Carolina over the period of a year. It's early spring now, and the foliage has started to pop out. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I want to get one shot now, and then I'm going to come back mid to late summer when this foliage, it starts to kind of get faded and slightly starts to brown and wilt a little bit. I'll take a photograph then. I'll come back in the wintertime when all of the foliage is completely fallen off of the trees and it's just bare trees, possibly even snow or ice, and take a photograph then. And then I will take all 4 of those photographs and fade them together into a video sequence. Now, each photograph may only appear on screen for 5 or 6 seconds, and then it's faded into the next photograph, and then faded into the other one, which will give us our lapse time. So to get started, we need to select a scene. I'm in the boat this morning, and I know this area really well, and I thought this might be a really good place to do a lapse time because of the layers of trees. I have a lot of depth to the scene, and we have all this beautiful foliage up here. We got the beautiful black water on the bottom here, and I've chosen about 8 o'clock in the morning because of the sun angle, not the quality of the light. Now, the quality of light is certainly very important, but for this particular shot, it's the angle of light. I don't want it too high because I don't want it in my shot. And the other thing is, in the winter months, the arc of the sun will be lower, so it will be more prevalent in my shots. So I'm choosing about 8 o'clock this morning. I have about a 45-degree angle of light coming across, beautiful side lighting. Now, the thing to remember to be successful with a lapse time or even a time lapse is that everything we do, we've got to make very good notes of what we did. The time of day, the angle of light, what the weather conditions are, all of our camera settings, and then exactly where we took the photograph from. The perspective, the height, all of this has to be recorded because we're going to come back and we're going to take this photograph again 3 more times throughout the year. And so everything has to be just right in order to make those photographs line up. Now, yes, you can correct some imperfections, like if the camera was a little bit higher, a little bit lower, slightly left or slightly right, you can correct those in post afterwards, but it's a lot easier just to do your homework, do it right the first time. Also, when you do those kind of corrections, you end up having to crop a little bit, so you're going to lose some of your resolution and some of your size if that's important to you. So anyway, the first things that we need to do, I've kind of selected the area. Now I need to kind of just handhold the camera at this point and visually figure out what you want in the shot. So I'm going to just look through the camera and kind of figure out how I want my composition. Maybe low. Now, perspective is everything, and we'll do another video on the importance of perspective. A camera way down low to the water is going to give you a much different feel and look as the same shot taken just a few feet or even a few inches higher. It makes all the difference in the world. I think for this particular shot, I don't want the camera too low because there is a lot of, it's not trash in the water, but it's leaves and debris that's just floating by. And for me, that's kind of distracting. Also, the lower you go, the more sky you're going to get. So I don't want too much sky in the shot. I do want the canopy of the trees, however, but I don't want too much of the sky. So I'm thinking about this height right here. Now, one other important thing is as you're trying to select a scene that you know you can come back to and duplicate the shot. So in this particular situation, I'm going to have to use a bracket to put the lens against the tree here. You could use a tripod in the water. If it were on dry ground, you could use a tripod. However you decide to do it, the key is just to make sure you mark exactly where that tripod was, how high that tripod was, those type of details. So for me, I think I'm going to use this tree right here, and yes, I'm just going to compose it just like that. I think that'll work really well. Okay, next thing is a bracket. These are great little brackets. They use them to put trail cameras on trees. It's a spike with a ball head on it. It's made by Slate River. Great little product. I've got tons of them. I use them for everything, and they last forever. They're pretty cheap, too. 10, 15 bucks. So I think what I'm going to do, we'll go ahead. I know this is about the height and kind of the perspective that I want. So we'll go ahead and just, all you do is just stick the point in the tree and start twisting, and it bites right in. You want to get it in there nice and tight. There we go. And then tighten it down. Now we'll mount the camera. And all you need to do that is loosen the ball head completely. And it's just a 1/4 thread on the bottom of most of your Arca Swiss type brackets, body brackets or lens brackets have a 1/4 thread in the bottom of it. So this is a 1/4 ball, and we're just going to thread it on there. Got a little safety nut so it doesn't come loose. All right, now that we've got it all in the ball head, we just need to recompose the shot. All right, that's looking good. So today I'm using a Canon R5 camera body and a Sigma Art 24mm lens. And then we also have a circular polarizer on there. Now, the reason I have a circular polarizer is because I do have water reflections and there's some specular highlights coming off of the water. And we're starting to get a little bit of specular highlights where the sun is actually lighting up the side of the trees. So that circular polarizer helps cut those specular highlights off and saturates your color and adds depth to the entire scene. So remember though, that takes a stop to 2 stops of light, depending on how strong you have the polarizer set at. That's also another thing that you need to remember when you come back in to take your subsequent photographs. So at this point, we've got it composed. I'm going to go ahead and focus it. And in this situation, like any landscape shot, you got to remember hyperfocal distance. Now, there's all kind of complicated equations and measurements to come up with hyperfocal distance. You don't need all that. I'm a simplified person, and the way I learned to do it is look through the camera and visually divide the scene into thirds. And you want to focus out 1/3 into the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through the camera here, and these two trees right here close to the boat, about 15 to 20 feet, that visually, as I look through the camera, is 1/3 out into my scene. So that would be 1/3. Kind of the line of trees in the background would be 2/3, and then infinity way off in the distance would be the last third. So I'm going to focus on this and get that part set up. All right, that looks good. One key thing to remember: if you use your autofocus to lock on that tree as a focus point, turn the autofocus off before you take the photograph. You don't want any chance that it could jump off onto something else when you're taking the photograph. Manually focus on that tree 1/3 out into the frame, and do that every time you come back to take another photograph. You want to use that exact same tree to focus on. The exact same point that you're going to focus, you have to duplicate that every time. Remember, everything we do, we have to duplicate exactly every time we take a photograph. Now we need to determine exposure. So like any landscape shot, our most important thing is our depth of field. So we're going to put our aperture at somewhere between 8 and 16. Now, depending on what lens you have on the camera, some lenses you start to get a little bit of diffraction and image quality loss at your higher f-stops, like 22. But everybody's lens is different, and so just testing your lens and knowing your equipment will be key here. For this particular lens, I absolutely love these Sigma art lenses. They are sharp all the way across, and I've found them to be sharp all the way through the apertures range. So I'm going to be shooting, I'm probably going to be f/14, f/16, somewhere in there. Now, the other thing is that we don't have anything moving, really. The camera is completely locked down and stable. There's very, very little breeze moving, and the water is fairly calm. So there's no movement. So shutter speed is not really critical at this point. So I'm probably going to choose a pretty slow shutter speed so that I can get my ISO down as low as possible. So let's see what we got. I think 1/50th of a second shutter speed at f/13 with an ISO of 2000 is going to work good for this particular scene. The reason my ISO is up so high is because I have a circular polarizer on there, and it's killing 2 stops of light. But the polarizer is really making the lush greens pop and killing those specular highlights on the water. So let's go ahead and take a test shot and see what we got. Yeah, that looks good. That looks real good. Now, one key thing, like with all photographs and trying to determine exposure, always trust your histogram. Do not trust what the image looks like on the back of your LCD screen. That is a very low resolution JPEG reference of the raw file. So it's going to be very contrasty, and you cannot trust what that image looks like as being your proper exposure. So trust the histogram. When we're exposing using a histogram, we always want to expose to the right. So adjust your exposures until the data on the histogram is as far to the right side as you can get it without touching the far right side. If the right side of the histogram represents whites, the left side of the histogram represents blacks, and if you touch the whites or you touch the blacks, you're going to clip them. That means that you've blown out the whites and there's no detail left there. If you blow out the whites or blow out the blacks, you lose the detail and you cannot recover it, period. That information is gone. So be sure to expose to the right and then back it down. You just want a little tiny gap between the data on the right side and the right side wall of the column. And the same with the blacks. You want just a little gap between the left side and where the data comes down to it, and you'll have a perfect exposure. All right. Another thing is, in this situation, we have a fairly decent shutter speed, so we don't, and there's no movement, so we don't really have to worry about camera shake. But it's, with a landscape shot, it's always a good idea to either use a cable release to trigger the camera, or use the self timer in the camera in order to take the picture without any chance of camera shake or vibration. So we'll go ahead and take our real photograph now and see what we got. And we've got our photograph, and we'll check information on it, and histogram looks perfect. All right, so now that we've got our photograph taken, the only thing we have left to do is to write down or record all of our information: shutter speed, f-stop, ISO, what we focused on, the height, the exact location of the tree that we anchored the camera to, or if you want to use this tripod, if I were to put the tripod down in the water here, mark exactly where that spot is. I even take my cell phone and take photographs of everything. So I'll back off a little bit and kind of take photographs showing the camera, the exact tree I was at, the focus point, all these little things. That way I can easily duplicate that when I come back this summer. I'm going to do it again in fall and then in winter. And we'll come along with me on all of those trips and show you exactly what we're doing and what the changes are. And then finally, I'll show you the result. The last thing we need to do is hide the brackets. So what I generally do, I'll take this stuff right here. It's called Spanish moss. I'll take big clumps of it, remove the camera. I'll leave the bracket here, so it's here. I mean, nobody's going to mess with it. We're in a swamp, and they would be really hard for them to find it. But I actually take the Spanish moss, and I wrap it all over this and hide that bracket. And that way it's here. It's ready to go when I come back, and I know it's going to be in the exact same spot. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're liking these type of videos, please hit that like button and remember to subscribe to the channel. That helps us bring content that you've been asking for. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.